So on this talk, I'm so happy to introduce you, Asta Rami. Maybe I didn't say it right. Asta, I met Asta 2 or 3 years ago. She's from Finland, and we were connected by a common friend, Emilia Lati, and I found out she did a PhD in intuition, believe it or not. So we're going to talk about intuition today. Welcome, Asta.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. It's an honor to be your guest.
Yeah. And, you know, I was really, really captivated when I found out she worked a lot on intuition, because finding a way for me to follow my intuition has completely changed my life. You know, instead of resisting life, I'm guided to where life wants me to go. So before we get to talk about that, let's discover who Asta is. So maybe you can share with us a bit who you are, Asta, and how you came to this work.
Yeah, thanks. I made my PhD on intuition a couple of years ago, and I have this kind of multidisciplinary background. One university degree from educational science, one from graphic design, and the third one from digital media, which I started to study in 1993. But instead of, going deeper into the digital media, I became interested about the human mind, because that has the real creative power. So I started my PhD on intuition, how to enhance your creative faculties, how to evaluate the reliability of your intuition, and how to use intentional intuition. Those were the things I was researching. You know, it's really nice if you have some nice intuitive insights, but what if you don't? If you work as a designer, do you then just wait that something pops up? No, intuition is a two-way channel. So if you can you can also acquire information through intuition. And then if you are acquiring information through intuition, it's important that you can evaluate whether the information is accurate or valid or reliable. So since then, I've been working as an entrepreneur. I worked 15 years in Media Lab before that. I helped students to enhance their creative process and integrate the intuitive mind in their work and problem solving and so forth. And then I have been writing a couple of books. 2 of them are in Finnish. The last one will come out in the end of this month. And then 2 chapters in English books also. I can maybe send the links if somebody is interested, if you want to include them in your presentation or somewhere else. So that's pretty much my background.
No, but it's very interesting when you would first talk to me about why you were interested in intuition with the design students, where they're all very good students. That's why they got into the program. And then some of them were highly creative and some of them got really stuck, you know, and the whole creative process, which you make a link with intuition, so was quite captivating for me. So the subject today that we chose, you and I, or you chose, or your intuition chose for you, is intuition and the creative power. And as I was telling you before, intuition, creation, and power for me are 3 very important words. And so I'm always captivated. So maybe we can talk about that. And maybe I can say, recently I was reading the biography of Leonardo da Vinci, probably one of the highest creative minds that ever existed. Not even educated formally, you know, no formal education. And creating all this stuff. It was very evident for me that he was a channel for creation to manifest itself. And so maybe we can talk about that, intuition and the creative power. Maybe you can give us some of your wisdom on that.
You know, funny coincidence, because I was also reading the work diaries of Leonardo da Vinci, and there he writes that among his peers, among other inventors, he is despised because his inventions are not based on books.
Yeah.
or others' research.
Yeah.
And he said that from his point of view, his way of working is superior because it's not based on old knowledge or books. And he's learning from the real master, which is the nature. And it was a quite shock for me to, read that he has been despised.
Yeah. But we'll talk about that. But Krishnamurti used to say, true creation requires destruction, the destruction of our beliefs, because then, if not, it's just evolution.
Yeah.
Creation is from nothing; it just comes from another place. So, I guess we'll talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So why intuition is important now is that if we are thinking about design, in design we have three different types of problems, and I will draw you examples.
That's fine.
The easiest ones are well-defined problems. There you know that this is the data and this is a good outcome. So there you can use analysis. It's pretty easy to analyze what is a good outcome. But then more challenging problems are ill-defined problems. It means that you can start with a problem, but then you end up with a different problem. The problem changes or evolves or comes more complex or whatever. And their analysis is not that good tool, but you can have a benefit on expertise. So if you have a good experience, you can combine maybe analysis and expertise and get really nice outcomes. You can optimize the outcomes. Often there is not just one good outcome, but several ones. But nowadays we're having these type of problems.
Yeah, it's very complex.
Wicked. Yeah. And here you can't analyze because you don't have enough data, or you have too much data, or you have too complex data, or you don't know what you don't know. You don't have maybe experience. Nobody has experience in the plastics in the oceans or climate change or whatever. And then the pitfall is that we think that these problems work in a similar way, that these wicked problems are like easy problems. So if we analyze a little bit more, or we collect the data a little bit more, we get the results. But that's not the case because they have a different logic, these wicked type of problems. And so therefore, here we need intuition. Intuition is our best tool with the wicked problems. But what we do, we develop artificial intelligence, and then we think that that will solve our problems. But I need to say a few words about this artificial intelligence because so many people are thinking that it will help us so tremendously and will solve our problems with that. But artificial intelligence is a simulated intelligence. So if we think about this type of picture, let's assume that this is a child and this is an adult, and then I draw you another type of picture with this type of symbols, and this is a child and this is an adult. So what is this?
It's two adults, two children.
Yeah, family.
Yeah.
But if we change that, this is a flower and this is a tree, so then you know that, well, this is a garden or forest or something. And for humans, this is super easy. Even a 5-year-old child can make that, but a computer cannot if it's not taught to do that. So therefore, intuition gives us tremendous power to recognize meanings, to make jumps over the holes to make associations, new connections, to build that sort of answers and ideas that are unique. It's our best way to see something that nobody else can see. But why we don't use it? It's because of our human mind is preventing us to see. And that I have been illustrating with a different example. That, you know, if we are trying to find an idea, but we are in a very stressed situation, all we see is, like, you know, walls everywhere, and we cannot invent anything. And usually if we are in a stressed situation, we end up being in a very small box where we can't find the answers. But when we start to quiet the stress down, and that's why when often you know, mindfulness and other mental practices work, is that even though we can't see the answer, we may see somewhere, you know, light in the end of the tunnel. Somewhere, you know, there could be some sort of outcome of the situation. But then when we start to enhance creative faculties, and that's what I was doing in the university for 10 more plus years, more than 10 years, almost 15 years. It's like you're supporting your internal intuitive faculties so that you can make the leap. Even though you don't see the answer, there might be some way to the solution. With empathy, with intuition, with imagination, we are able to surpass our limits and to access something new. But, you know, do you have a question?
I was going to ask you a question. Yeah, one of the things you said is that the problem is we're trying to apply old solutions to new problems.
Yeah.
The problems we're facing, we've never faced before. Like the coronavirus and the global warming, we've never faced it. Or maybe not humanity, but nature faced it, but we did not face it. So it's funny how sometimes I think we need to stand on a cloud on nothing to actually find new solutions, you know? And then the question is, where do those solutions come from if they don't come from our education, you know?
That is a very good question. And it's my next topic.
Beautiful.
But I want to, you know, take you slowly forward. And if we're thinking about this, the first picture where we are inside the box, you know, everybody tells that we need to widen our box, or we need to think outside of the box. But box is a space, so when we start to expand the box, it widens into every direction. And currently, how the current psychology and neuroscience sees intuition is that, now I'm talking about human thinking, we have two systems, system 1 and system 2. And system 2 is reasoning, and it's a very small processor. The researchers have been calculating that during 1 second of time, it maybe calculates 40 bits of information. It's a very small processor. And intuition is a huge processor. During 1 second time, it handles approximately, depending on the reference, from 11 million to 40 million bits per second. But intuition is like an umbrella. There are different types of intuitions, different type of processes going on all the time. And maybe many of you know Daniel Kahneman. He has been researching heuristics and the biases of heuristics. So it's like a small area and the biases of heuristics. But there are several processes going on. And therefore, researchers are telling that instead that you are talking about intuition in general, you should specify what type of intuition you are talking about.
Okay.
Because these different intuitions are based on different knowledge bases. And now, during the last year, I have been researching Finnish inventors, and therefore I was reading the working diaries of Leonardo da Vinci too. And I realized that these inventors are integrating three diverse types of intuitions, and that makes their use of intuition so brilliant. And now we get to the topic you asked for, that where does the information come from? So to make it simple, I have divided intuition into three different angles or areas. And the first of it is instinct-based intuition, which is based on evolution, biology. You know, we are all living in a herd, not anymore, but we used to. A lot of intuitions related to herd-based functions, social relationship, pecking order, or mating, or surviving. They come from this instinct-based intuition. But it's very different from domain-specific or expertise-based intuition. Like an experienced doctor is using a lot of intuition, but it's not based on instinct. It's based on a subconscious or non-conscious huge database where you have the 1,000 patients, and then the information is mapping on some higher level. There's a lot of pattern matching and pattern recognition processes going on. And these are the types of intuition that the current psychology and neuroscience is crediting. But neither of these are explaining the intuitions that Leonardo da Vinci is using, or Nikola Tesla is using, or the inventors are using, or brilliant artists or businessmen that describe that, I see the window of opportunity and the others don't see it. So there's a third dimension of intuition, which I call super intuition. But basically, it's somehow taken out of our Western view of men or Western science. It seemed to be something mysterious or weird or out of this world. And it's natural that people think that it's something unexplainable, because here the human logic cannot follow into super intuition. The human logic or analysis is not working there. And therefore, when you get intuitive insights, sometimes they seem to be very ridiculous one, because you cannot analyze them until the end. There you need the ability or skill to make these kind of jumps. I was showing you where is it? This one. How to see the connection, how to see the meaningfulness, even though it's absent. And Well, these three different intuitions, they work differently. They have their own biases and their own good sides. I describe that they have their brake pedals and gas pedals, and it's no use to push gas with two pedals if you have one brake on.
Mm-hmm.
But what is a good news is that in a team, you don't have to find all these intuitions in the same head. You can combine them in a team if you have a safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially this type of intuition needs a lot of safety around, because it's so outcasted of our language, of our science. If you're talking about intuitions that come from super intuition, people pretty soon can think that you're out of your mind, or you're a holy roller, or you're an embarrassing person. And all these inventors throughout the decades have been facing this same thing as Leonardo da Vinci. He was despised because he was, I call it like, you know, these type of persons are like printing from super intuition.
Yeah.
But they all also combine it with the domain specific expertise and this instinct base, because here we are as a humans, you know, with fresh perceptions and eyes and ears and hands. This is like more like a talking head, and this is something outside of the human logic.
You know, because it has happened to me, I've been called crazy very often. And I, you know, did my research, and all geniuses were first called crazy because they're talking a language no one can understand. So in my case, I'm talking about the language of love, and we could lead with love, and we can create a society that is based on love and not fear. So for most people in the traditional system, they don't understand. They think I'm not realist. But I don't want to be realist. So the people like Tesla, Da Vinci, they're despised because they speak a different language than the average, you know. And so this super intuition, how can someone access it? I think I have my own way, but I would like, since you're the researcher and the PhD, I would like for you to share with the people here how you could advise them to find a way to access it, because you can't force this, you know. In my case, it's more a surrendering process. I become in service of this great, I call it consciousness, but you know, and then it keeps giving me stuff, you know, it keeps coming, you know. But how can someone access it? Maybe you can give us advice on that.
Actually, you could also call these three angles like instinct base is the power, or the force. It's more like force. Domain is the intelligence, but super intuition is the level of love. And therefore, if we cannot enter love, we cannot enter this super intuition, because it's dimension that it's connecting all of us. And what is really fascinating is that throughout the history, there have been living these geniuses like Da Vinci, or Nobel laureates, or visionary type of inventors and so forth. And while I was, you know, describing that, there's the solution is not visible to you. These type of inventors and Nobel laureates, you know, they just go through the wall. And this is the level of love that it's surpassing. There's no separation we think that people and things are separate, but they are not. And therefore, that super intuition level is the one that you can directly go and get the answers. But there you need the dimension of love. At the moment, I think that reasoning is the level that humankind as a whole can access. But now we need to make the leap to a higher resonance so that we can access this super intuition level. Therefore, it goes really nicely together with your thoughts. And also,
right. Now you go.
David Hawkins lately has been inspiring me so much.
I know.
And he has this map of consciousness.
Yeah.
And it actually goes so well together with this mapping of intuition that when you raise your consciousness, you're able to access higher levels.
You know, there's I didn't know you were going to say that. So when I talked about love, I didn't know. So it's obviously a greater power than me talking. So because, we come from two different angles, but it completely unites. And there's a movie, maybe you've seen the movie Interstellar. The guy goes in space.
Yeah.
And the only way he communicates with his daughter is through love. And then it transcends dimensions,
Yeah.
And then through the watch, she knows that her dad is connecting with her. And this is David Hawkins, as you know, has inspired me for the last 15 years. And when he describes the level of love on the scale, just for people listening that don't know him, it's a scale of 1,000, it's 500 unconditional love. And when he describes that, it's what I intend to create every day in my life around me.
Yeah.
It's not easy because, we face all sorts of, but I can see now in your language of a researcher, someone who really thought a lot about that. I can see that this super intuition, or some other spiritual teacher will call it a supramental. It's outside of us, but it's us. We're all connecting to this.
Yeah.
So it's really powerful, because there's, talked about Nikola Tesla, but there's also Elon Musk, who did not invent, but you see how he runs his business. He's been driven by a greater power. I'm not saying he's a perfect man, but even one man to achieve one of the three things he's doing in one life, now it's three. Or Steve Jobs, that invented the iPhone with rocks. He had a vision. So I guess the answer to my question is to let go of fear and embrace love, and to.
Yeah, but we cannot get rid of the instinct-based intuition. So therefore, we need to know all those three angles in us. Otherwise, what happens is what I think is happening right now at the moment, when we look at our leaders, they behave like toddlers. So when researchers tell that when you are not connected to your non-conscious at all, it affects behind the curtain, so-called behind the curtain, and it has a stronger effect on you since it's under the surface. And therefore, we need to know all those three angles. Nikola Tesla could not have made his inventions if he hadn't his professional expertise.
Yep.
And also the ability to build physical prototypes.
Yep.
But he's extremely interesting person since in his in his book My Inventions, he writes that all the inventions he made, or all the patents he has with the machinery, he made the inventions within 2 months in his life. He has approximately 300 patents, and he writes that all the patents that are motors or engines, he was inventing within 2 months
Wow.
time in his life. And the only difficulty was to hold on those ideas that were, coming to his mind. And he has described that within that 2 months period, he was the happiest man ever. So when you're connected to the superconscious, which is love, the happiness is a side product.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's a side product. But then, Nikola Tesla was considered to be a little bit mad too. And it's very unfortunate because those are the greatest minds of history. And we still have those people. Therefore, I have been now working together with hospital schools. They're having a lot of children with these kind of abilities to use the multiple dimensions in your mind. Nikola Tesla was benefiting those. And the inventors I have been using, they are also using those kind of layers in their mind. And they are printing from super intuition.
And it's good that you say, I read one time, if a shaman went into a mental hospital, he would see other shamans. Meaning that a shaman in a tribe has access to a different kind of intelligence that does not fit into society. And you're right that in my country, there's a lot of prescription for medication for ADHD.
Yeah.
And in my province, we consume 70% of the medication for the whole country. And I'm saying it cannot be that our kids, in the water, there's ADHD disease. It could be that there are kids that are working differently. And the traditional system of I give you some learning and you need to swallow it without question, it doesn't work for them,
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you are working with hospitals and maybe education.
And most of the inventors I have been interviewing, they are, some of them are really genius. Most of them are telling that they have this
ADHD, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Or Asperger syndrome.
Attention deficit,
or bipolar disorders. And several type of mental disorders. But they are, I think that they're just, that their brain is working differently.
It's funny what you said. I would never call myself a genius, but I think we're all geniuses in some aspects. But some days my mind just takes so much that I have to choose because my body cannot execute all these other ideas. And in my life, intuition has played a big part. I differentiate a bit between inspiration and intuition. For me, I call it, when I connect to this field, I call it inspiration. But my intuition is what to choose. What am I going to work on? This resonates, or I should talk to Asta or not. How does it feel? And it's funny because when I listen, truly listen, I always get the right answer. When I don't listen, I find out a few weeks later that I made a mistake. I should have listened because there were signs. Like for me, it's a feeling. I don't see it, but it's a feeling. Okay, this feels right or not, but it takes training for us to listen. In my case, it took a lot of training to listen to it, lots of mistake,
But the researchers tell that maybe the biggest blocks or biases of intuition are emotions. And the famous Finnish emotion researcher Lauri Nummenmaa states that when strong emotion is activated, our thinking tilts. We can't think clearly anymore because it's a very primitive reaction that overdrives our thinking. Therefore, it's very valuable to observe if you're having strong emotions of either fear or love, because then you can't see clearly. And many people tell that, yeah, intuition feels. But then when I start to question more, what kind of feeling, what kind of emotion, then they go and maybe describe embodied information or sensations that are not strong emotions, but more like what you said, that you feel that this is right, or you feel that it's not wrong. But sometimes if there's a strong emotions included, like in personal matters or relationships or so forth, it's maybe often good to observe your embodied sensations, because our thinking may be entangled, our emotions may be messy, but our body is quite reliable because we cannot manipulate our body. So what feels inside of our heart or stomach or guts or spine or head or so forth, they're usually quite good tips and hints.
Yeah, and I agree. And for me, what I rely on is, do I feel contraction or expansion?
Yeah,
Do I feel
yeah,
fear or do I feel love? And it's
yeah.
funny because I told someone I never invite a speaker at my conferences unless I can feel a heart-to-heart connection.
Okay.
They don't have to be my best friend,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
feel if there is a heart connection, then we're both serving consciousness. I can feel it.
yeah,
And when I feel someone just wants to get credibility or self-promotion, I can feel it, and that's why I
yeah,
mentioned that it's inside. It may be around my heart, I feel sadness or
yeah,
I feel expansion. You mentioned something. You said empathy to go across the wall.
yeah.
Can you talk about briefly about empathy? Why is that important?
Mm. Uh, Intuition and empathy have a correlation in several research, and empathy is also a two-way channel. If you can get information through empathy, you can also acquire information through empathy. It's called empathetic projection. You can imagine that how somebody feels if he or she is hurt, or so forth. And also intuition is a two-way channel. And the researchers, they cannot tell that whether intuitive people are empathetic or empathetic people are intuitive, but they seem to have connection, and most likely they have a common basis. And with both of these, you're able to somehow go beyond your personal um, um, feelings or personal worldviews. You're able to surpass yourself. Therefore, teaching empathy is a very good way to teach intuition too.
I mean, for me, it's all related to love. It's all
Yeah,
empathy, intuition, and it's funny how the connections my brain's making. This movie, which is one of my favorite movie, Interstellar,
yeah,
and I
it
could
is.
see when I'm reading the biography of Da Vinci, his teacher is nature, and he truly
Yeah,
loves nature. He truly loves
yeah,
to, and
yeah,
the Mona Lisa, he practiced 5 years before he painted it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
every little thing is all thought and reflection, and you can see the love. The love.
yeah.
Beautiful. Let me ask you one last question. In your country, I think you've been
Mhm.
playing a role. Intuition is also discussed in the education system, in school.
Yes,
Can we
yes.
talk briefly about that?
Yeah, in 2016, we got new curriculum for all the schools, and intuition was included in that. And the group who compiled the national curriculum, I met some of those people afterwards, and they told that, "You're Asta, I'm so happy intuition is included in our curriculum. because most likely we are the only country in the world who has intuition in our national level school curriculum.
I think so. And for me, it's such a breakthrough because the traditional system, at least in my country, is it's about the brain, rational teaching. And I, without insulting anyone in education, most of the system, I think, is to indoctrinate children into the system. This is the way, and train students to go work in corporate factories, even though they are in the office. And I find intuition is contributing to helping a child flourish to its own potential, and some of these children will actually bring solutions to the problems we're facing now,
I think so. I'm pretty sure. And I also think that they are having some sort of mental disorders. Otherwise, they wouldn't be that brilliant. But most likely, it's a combination of different sort of beautiful minds.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Asta. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.